Sometimes in our everyday lives, we find ourselves witnessing or having to take part in conflicts of opinions, but not just opinions of facts, but also of values and views about right and wrong. You might be tempted to do something that would in some ways benefit you, but at the same time, you might be aware that others would not accept that act, or you might yourself feel that the act is wrong. For example, think of shoplifting or other kinds of stealing, or betraying a friend's trust in some way. You and your friends might even have differing opinions of which of those things are wrong or how wrong they are. People have various different ideas about what is right and wrong, good and evil, how one should behave or what one should or shouldn't do, what is justice or injustice, what acts are exemplary or dishonorable, and so on. These opinions reflect different views on morality, different morals. The sources of these morals can be varied as well. They can be related to religion, folktales, traditional customs, literature, or something else. Typically, people adopt the morality of the culture and community they are born and socialized into. They internalize the communal morals of their culture and seldom question them. This kind of morality normally guides the behavior of the members of the community in a way that may be invisible to the members, in the sense that everyone just acts the way they should. Morals only become visible when someone steps out of line, or a moral conflict arises, or a clash with a different culture occurs, or a philosopher starts asking strange questions. When I use the term morals, I am referring to rules of morality that come from any of such typically communal sources, religious or otherwise. What is important is that they are mostly unquestioned beliefs about what is good or bad behavior, or how one should live, or what acts are exemplary. The phrase moral of the story conveys the idea pretty well. The story is supposed to teach the audience something about values and how one should conduct one's life. Now that you have a basic understanding of what morals means, you will probably guess that moral philosophy is the subfield of philosophy that deals with morals. Another name for this subfield is ethics. The reason for the two distinctly different sounding names for the same subject is simply historical. Ethics comes from Greek, ethikos, while morals comes from Latin, mores. Both root words originally meant the same thing, the way of the ancestors. In both cultures, it was thought that following the customs of the ancestors would be good, and it would guide new generations to conduct their lives well. When I use the term ethics, unless I make a specific exception, I am talking about the subfield of philosophy focused on morality and related things. As with all philosophy, what makes moral philosophy special or different from other discourse concerning morality is the requirement of rationality. The only acceptable authority in philosophy is reason. Religious morals can be said to originate in the will of God, for example, but that is not an acceptable justification for a philosopher. Even if a god had declared what thou shalt not do, a philosopher would still insist on the rational justification for those commandments. After all, simply following orders even if it is considered the moral thing to do, is not a justification for unethical behavior. Also, a philosopher would like to know what makes a commandment the right one to obey, and would expect it to be explained, perhaps by the god in question, if no one else manages to do it. A title, even that of a god, does not justify a claim, as an appeal to authority is a well-known fallacy. Typically, though, we do not get to converse with gods, just other humans. If they expect others to accept their views, they should not appeal to anything that is not universally available, the way the ability to reason is. Thus, ethics is necessarily a humanistic endeavor. Humans can only discuss it with other humans, even though we can and should include other sentient beings among the things relevant to our ethics. Our actions can harm other animals as well as humans, after all. We can even consider nature more broadly as relevant to ethics, and there is even a specialist field of philosophy discussing things like that. While a part of ethics, known as normative ethics, does indeed aspire to prescribe universal rules of good conduct, which could be called morals, as I have just explained, that is only part of ethics. As philosophy is often about analyzing concepts, it should come as no surprise that a significant part of ethics involves the analysis of concepts like value, good, and so on. It may seem a bit paradoxical, but this branch of ethics is called metaethics. Meta referring to a higher level of abstraction. In normative ethics, a philosopher may be discussing rules for choosing the right action, but in metaethics, she may be discussing what right action even means. She can also analyze whole systems or theories of ethics and make groupings of them according to some criteria. Metaethics uses the conceptual tools of other branches of philosophy, such as metaphysics, epistemology, philosophy of mind, and philosophy of language, to make sense of what ethics is really about. Sometimes metaethics is called analytic ethics, but I will stick to using the more common term metaethics. Besides analyzing ethical systems and prescribing ethics for the whole world, a philosopher may also seek a specific way of life for herself, which would be referred to as a philosophy of life. This is also part of ethics. You can think of it as prescribing a way of life for yourself. Everyone will adopt a life stance of some kind, but a thinking person tries to do so intentionally, by making rational, justified decisions and choices. It has been thought that otherwise one is simply adrift, pushed by random currents, not really taking action and controlling oneself and one's own life. Taking responsibility for one's own life and choices requires thinking about ethics. Philosophical answers to practical ethical questions or specific situations is called applied ethics. For example, physicians have ethical codes of conduct to guide them, but the general code can sometimes be difficult to apply in a real-life situation. A general norm in medicine could require the physician to preserve life, but in some situations that could mean continuing and even increasing suffering. It might then be thought merciful to end the suffering by ending the life, to allow a good death, euthanasia. It could involve the physician in an assisting role only, or a more active one, which again brings up further important questions. Some will even argue that a patient has the right to die with dignity, demanding the physician to kill the patient. But that could be very traumatic for the physician herself. I hope you can see how this can easily lead to conflicts between different norms. Applied ethics is about trying to give an answer to a specific case, much like a legal precedent used in a court of law. An acceptable solution can afterwards be applied without having to go through the whole discussion again every single time a similar case comes up. There is a field of study called descriptive ethics. It is the empirical study of moral behavior and opinions. Because of its empirical nature, it is not really philosophy. It belongs to cultural studies, social science, psychology, and possibly other fields like that. The purpose of this line of inquiry is to find out how people think about morality and how they actually behave. Their behavior may be different from their professed opinions and beliefs, and they may even be unaware of the contradictions between their alleged beliefs and actual behavior. This may be of interest to philosophers, but as it is not itself part of philosophy proper, I will say no more of it here. All of these other branches of ethics will be covered in the videos that follow. Stay tuned. Bye for now. If you wish to support my channel, please click thumbs up, subscribe, and share my videos. Any comments on the videos would also be welcome.